this is the reason why men are struggling the way that they are.
Most people don't really know who they are, or they don't take the time to figure out who they are.
Right. My anger, my happiness, my joy, my fear, my disappointment, my anxiousness is caused by what?
Jimmy, a big household name, yeah, in the mental health space. First off, thanks for coming. Reason ki I asked you to come here is part of the reason that we do this podcast is to bring awareness to what men in Seychelles are going through in terms of their mental health, in terms of the trajectory of our development as men. And I know that's right down your alley in terms of what you do for a living. So let's start with this. Let's start with what is it that you do and how does that relate to men's mental health?
Okay. I work as a psychotherapist, but actually I also work as a preacher, so I have this spiritual background as well.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, but here, as a psychotherapist, you're listening to people. You are trying to guide individuals toward a place where they become the better version of themselves, take responsibility, go on an adventure, if you will, so that they can not just tap into their potential, but really kind of make great things happen. And so we create that space that is safe to where people can explore the good, the bad, and the ugly, and make decisions that ultimately will be best for them. So,
I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly within themselves.
Within themselves.
And on the outside as well?
Sure, because oftentimes what happens is the difficulty to look within, because it makes you feel too vulnerable, allows you to focus too much on the outside. So therefore, especially men, we become enamored and even in love with the image of ourselves rather than the reality of who we are. And so the longer you do this, the longer you go away from yourself. But at the end of the day, people are entering relationship with an image, with a phantom, with a fantasy, but not with the real person. And sometimes it's hard to give that up, especially if you've been given adoration, admiration, accolades based on the image. It's very hard to let go of this because the question would be, what would happen to me if they see me for who I know myself to be? You see, it's not just a daunting idea, it's scary.
It is. So, it is. Interesting, because that's a topic that we delved a little bit into in a previous episode, where we're talking about the persona that you form as you're growing up.
Right.
And then how in different stages of life you have to sort of like come to terms with the reality that this is not really who you are, and then you have to develop into who you are. But then where does one start with that? How do we start?
Anyways, persona is not necessarily wrong. Persona basically is, basically when you look at a person, there's various fragments of the individual. The person I was yesterday is a part of who I am today, and today it adds on. So different circumstances demand different presentation of myself. For instance, there's no way if I go to like the beach soccer game, I'm going to let people know around me the intricacies of my relationship with my wife, my biggest fear and vulnerabilities. That's not,
you're not going to wear that on your sleeve.
Yeah, of course. So the persona that I present is I'm a Seychellois, I'm rooting for our country. So we're bonding on that. So there's a face of me you will see. It's not hypocritical, but there's a level to it where it protects the most intimate aspect of me to where people who have I determine have gained the right or the credibility to understand me in the most innermost place, then they will be allowed in. So different areas, different places demand a part of me. So that's the idea of persona in some ways. But it's true, persona also can mean the mask.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So some people actually will allow the identity to be defined by a particular persona. You see? And so that's how they always present themselves. So I think it's important to kind of delineate what we kind of mean by the persona. Is it the big umbrella, or is it the particular identity that I want to present to other people? See?
No, I see what you mean. Because in my language, usually when I would say persona would be like this different aspects of yourself, and this is the image that you present.
Right. The
That's
public,
the
which is true.
Yeah. But then, as you rightly said, like different people would then see different versions of me,
of course,
at different points in my life.
Right.
How does one navigate that so that they don't become hypocritical to themselves?
Well, I mean, of course, we can't be perfect in this endeavor.
Yeah.
But I think having the self-awareness and
Mm-hmm.
being true, when we say being authentic, it truly means remaining true to who you truly know you are, to
Mm-hmm.
what's really going on, your strengths and your weaknesses, your limitations and all your capacity. I think when you try to be pretentious, that's where there's a various aspect or different definition of persona, because you're trying to convince people that you are something that you deeply know you're not. You see? But if I remain true to the person that I am, I will speak about things that I know is true about me, that is, that other people know is true about me, then let that speak for itself. And as long as you do this, that truth will kind of like lay out that personality, it will lay out the true person that I am, and it will allow you to decide what kind of engagement you want to have with me as a person.
That's assuming that you know who you are.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
What
that's
of,
what's
because the thing that I've observed and I've talked about with a bunch of people, that most people don't really know who they are, or they don't take the time to figure out who they are.
right.
Like I personally had a hard time figuring out who I was, because I've been so many different people in so many different times in my life. How does one know who they are?
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. In the 90s, there
Very
was
deep questions, but yeah.
I know. In the 90s, there was a journalist who wrote one of the most consequential book called Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman. And in there, what he did, he kind of presented what he felt like was missing in our sense of self and our connection with others. So emotional intelligence basically was defined as the capacity to understand my emotion, to recognize my emotion, and to have the ability to regulate my emotion, but also to understand and recognize emotions in others and to help regulate them in our social skills. So, and seriously, that book changed psychology as we know it as far as interpersonality, and you see the value of understanding yourself. That is, there are few major factors in that concept: self-awareness, self-regulation, other-aware, and also managing other relationships. So, self-awareness starts with the idea of recognizing exactly what makes me tick. Fundamentally, the one place where we start is with our emotions. My anger, my happiness, my joy, my fear, my disappointment, my anxiousness is caused by what? Because your emotions basically are the language of your soul. The what is it telling me about me? But sometimes I experience various emotions, but I don't know why.
You don't know why.
You see? And so I keep going down that vicious cycle of behaving the same way, although I want it to change, but because I've not recognized what's causing it, what's at the root of it, so it's like I give up. It is what it is. I identify myself with that emotion.
With the
you
emotion
see?
rather than what triggers that
Yeah,
emotion.
yeah. Understanding
Interesting.
what he's saying, yeah.
Yeah, that would be similar to, let's say, someone who gets angry very easily, and then you're like,
Right.
yeah, I'm an angry person.
There you
But
go.
you're not really an angry person. You
No.
just get angry because of this trigger that keeps repeating itself. So
Yeah,
you have to figure out what
basically,
that
I
trigger
normally
is.
say your body's speaking a language through anger. So now the question is, what is it saying? It's alerting us of something. It's warning us of something. But what is it saying? You see?
Ah, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think, I know you do that in your practice, and like as a psychotherapist, and then as a preacher, you do that one-on-one and with groups, right?
Yeah, groups one-on-one.
What would you tell someone who has not come down to see you, or is not seeing anyone for that matter, who is at home alone and wants to be able to develop their emotional intelligence? How would you
Okay, if they don't want to see anybody particularly, I think online there's so many resources.
but that's a big field.
Well, it's true, but I think just really learning about emotional intelligence is a good place to start. At least reading Daniel Goleman's book
Okay.
will be a
Yeah.
good place to start.
I'll
Or
put a link to that.
even YouTube videos where people have given lectures, kind of breaking it down in more layman's term, so people can really identify. I mean, this is what it means, because every human being feels. Every human being have emotions, is now just having the ability to understand
Understand the
my
emotion.
emotions,
Yeah.
understand myself, and understand other people. Empathy will come in, which we need to talk about a lot when it comes to men. Empathy, understanding, relating, controlling. Like you have all these various factors that helps me understand my emotion. It's almost like if when you look at fire, right? If I'm the master of any spark of any fire, I will create wonderful things, right? I will cook wonderful food. I will have candlelight dinner. I will light, a beautiful home. But if the fire controls me, it burns every good thing in my life.
True.
So emotion works the same way. It is so powerful, but if it's dysregulated, if I can't control it, it can burn a lot of bridges, it burn a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's crucial for us to understand our emotion. The reason I put emphasis on this is because this is the reason why men are struggling the way that they are. Because oftentimes there's an emotional insecurity, there's an emotional wound, there's an emotional misunderstanding and emotional dysregulation that allows us to lose ourselves in relationships. You see, or even burn down relationship because we can't really be in control of our emotions. You see?
Interesting. Interesting. You mentioned empathy. How does that fit in?
Empathy is really the idea of seeing and hearing things from the other person's perspective.
Now you're going outside now.
Yeah. So it's really, you may not agree with what the person says or what the person is experiencing, but you are sitting from their perspective and seeing through the lens with which they are living their experience, to the point where you will go, oh, now I understand. And it will allow you to just be present with them. Sometimes we are afraid to be empathetic because we feel we are condoning something we don't agree with. We feel like somehow if I'm empathetic, it will reduce the justice that I desire from the person, or it will minimize the consequence with which the person needs to face. It has nothing to do with that. It just means that you understand where the person is coming from, even if they've done something as egregious as whatever you consider to be wrong. It's just having the right understanding from that person's perspective. You see? It's just being there with that person, being in their shoes.
That's a lot of work, though.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
you talked a bit about the internal work that needs to happen, about developing your own emotional intelligence, which is a big work in itself. And then now understanding someone else's emotions and then looking at the world from their perspective. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you went in that direction because we are eventually, I want to land on relationships,
Yes.
intimate relationships,
Right.
and marriages and boyfriend girlfriend
Sure.
type stuff. And I see how these two factors play a great role in the health of the relationship itself, right?
Right.
Because on the one hand, each person in the relationship has to know themselves,
Right.
be emotionally intelligent in a sense,
Right.
and then also understand each other and look at the world from each other's perspective so that they can help each other grow.
Right.
Is that correct?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But let me start with the man. Warren Farrell made a very controversial, but I think one of the most important statement about empathy. He said, when you look at empathy in men, oftentimes it's cultivated when fathers roughhouse with their sons. So you think a dad is from the time his son is 2 or 3 years old, every morning, every evening, anytime they get a chance, they're roughhousing, playing wrestling, picking on each other, rolling on the floor. He says this is one of the best ways to cultivate empathy in men. It's like, so
Interesting.
how in the
How so?
world? So in reality, what we see, the boys have that impulse, right, to be aggressive. So when the dad is roughhousing with his son, the one thing he's going to do, not just allow the son to express how he feels and play, but also when he hits dad too much, when he screams too loud, that is going to like trying to regulate him. You see? And so if you get a dose of this every single day, you come a point where this young man is learning how to control all that flood of
Yeah.
emotions and excitement. And so now he's 17, at 16, 17 years old, he starts interested in girls. He wants to connect in relationship. You have a very centered, measured, temperate young man who understands himself because emotionally he's stable. And this is why it's so crucial, which we're going to talk more about, hopefully. It is so crucial to have men involved in their son's life, or
In the
both of
home.
the kids, I mean, girls and boys, but particularly boys, because of the proclivity for boys to be overly aggressive if they've not learned how to regulate and control that emotion.
That's interesting. When you were saying this, two things came to mind here. One, as like the emotional regulation is like you have a volume knob rather than an on-off button. It's
Right.
a volume
Yes,
knob.
very
So the
good.
boy now needs to understand how to put up the volume and then put down the
Yeah, how
volume.
to adjust.
And this is learned through the physical action with the dad.
Yeah,
right?
it's like co-regulation. It's like the dad becomes the what do you call it? The thermostat that allows the son to know what temperature to be on. You see? So we adjust, we become flexible with circumstances. And the more you do this, and plus it's an implicit experience. The body memorizes this. The body actually fits that tone. It's not something you think about.
Yeah.
That's why when you don't engage in that regulation, you just overreact. Oh, I was so, you made me angry. That's why I punched you. Why did you do it? I don't know. It's true he doesn't know.
Yeah.
You see? Because he's never understood or recognized this emotion in himself. You see?
So this is like a subconscious system that's developing.
It is.
It's not conscious.
It is.
Interesting.
Yeah. It is very self-conscious because it's implicit. You don't think about it because it's almost your DNA emotionally. It's your blueprint emotionally.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to learn to recognize it, understand it, and then hopefully learn to grow it. It's never too late. It gets harder the older you get, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's never too late to start becoming more emotionally intelligent.
So would you say that's why, I said two things came to mind. We're still on that first one. Would you say that is why having absent fathers in the home leads then eventually to boys, like teenage boys, going out of control or dealing into drugs and alcohol and whatnot, getting these outlets?
It's
Would
the
you say
number
that's-
one reason.
Yeah.
And actually, I will use again what Warren Farron says: is father deprives sons. Not necessarily that their
father
fathers.
deprived sons.
Yeah, because sometimes fathers are there,
But they're not there.
they're not emotionally present. So it's when I'm deprived of the father's presence, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, morally, then it leaves a void.
Yeah.
And many of those young boys are seeking, are searching, are desiring to have this male presence to guide them because they feel with all this energy, but they're not sure how to channel it. They're not sure what to do with it.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah. Okay, I'll get to the second thing and then we'll come back to this because I want to go on another tangent
Sure.
on this topic. The second thing that came to mind is, would you say this not learning the volume knob that we talked about, not learning this at a young age, is it why you would find a lot of guys when they meet girls later on in life, like at teenage or a little bit later than that, they end up instead of just dialing down the intensity of their emotions or whatever, they just switch it off completely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they don't have that regulation.
Yeah, they switch it off, or they could even actually make it go full blast. For instance, if you were to ask the majority of young boys, where do they learn about how to connect with a girl, a female? Most of us in porn videos, in porn magazines. And why is it so? It's not just because it's so accessible. Porn allows a shortcut to connect to female, beautiful ones, and they never the videos never say no. These bombshells never reject you.
Yeah.
They're always welcoming, and they allow you to experience this euphoria sexually. So then there's a short circuit that is created, and so now when I meet a real person, the one fear that I have is, will she accept me? Will she be attracted to me? I can't stand to be rejected.
Yeah.
That's why we get overly aggressive because we believe if we control her, then somehow she would not reject me.
Yeah.
She would accept me. You see? And so it's done a number on men emotionally. It's really exposed how emotionally immature we've been.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a lot of aggression, especially sexual aggression in relationships, because men have not had the opportunity, oftentimes, to develop, to grow, and to regulate their emotions in that way. But it works for women as well, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street. Going back to that first point, you said father-deprived boys. These are the most at-risk ones.
Yes, most at
to
risk.
be emotionally dysregulated.
Right, right.
If, say, the fathers are absent in the home, or they are in the home but they're not very active with the boys, how does a guy then get what they need from the fathers? Would you say like male teachers or other guys in the
So what's that, like the
what's the
replacement kind
alternative?
of?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think a mentor would be great. I think every young man and every young lady need a mentor, need somebody for them to look up to, almost become like a mirror for them to follow.
Yeah.
It's very, very important because you understand we don't live as an island on our own.
True.
We live
No
in
man is
in
an island.
communities. And so therefore, in order for me to be the best that I can be, I need to be molded in a certain way.
Yeah.
See, I need to know how to act. I need to understand the rules of the game. Behind the word, can you act? Can you give if you don't know the rules of the game? You see, it will be very awkward. So that's why male role models are so crucial.
Yeah.
For men particularly, so we can learn responsibility, we can learn about ourselves, and we can learn from even our mistakes.
Yeah.
You see, and be the best we can be, definitely.
Would you say we have many male role models
In the
Seychelles?
world?
In Seychelles, like
No,
I don't know about the world.
no, I don't think so, unfortunately.
How do we improve that?
Be, starting with me and you,
Yeah.
volunteering to be a role model. It's a burden, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
burden to be a role model because you understand now you're responsible in a sense to help shape another young man or another young lady, especially a young man's life. But it's a responsibility that we should voluntarily take. I think oftentimes we have focused too much on me. What is best for me, what is convenient for me,
Yeah.
rather than what am I compelled to do, even at the risk of losing some stuff that is important in my life. See, time, money, or whatever. So mentors are necessary.
Very
And I
necessary.
think if we look around, we've got some amazing young men, even amazing men in Seychelles. But unfortunately, all these have been lost because of the propensity of men to kind of go astray, to fall on the wayside, simply because they've not had that kind of guidance. And people who've helped believe in them and trust in them a sense of hope that they could be much more than perhaps they are.
Yeah. It's a big task.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What effect does that have on women now?
Oh.
Like the fact that we've got few male role models, which means then few people that boys can look up to then understand the emotional intelligence and then to understand empathy as well. Then, based on what you've seen in your practice, how has that affected women in general?
Okay, very good. Now, most of the time, when a young woman meets a young man, she's naturally attracted to him, right? So we start with this physical attraction, which is all right, and then that spark, that connection, makes her feel somehow there's something there. The young man shows commitment, she shows commitment, and so slowly we grow into a relationship. Now, what she does, she gives him the benefit of the doubt that you look strong, you look handsome, possibly you have a good job. So she assumes that he's also emotionally responsible and mature. So what happens eventually, especially when we settle and we're taking life's major responsibility, she never thought she would be put in a position where she has to mother him. She wants to partner with him.
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's where now you see babies come, we're building a house, we have to make major life decision, and she goes to him. What do you think, honey? what we're gonna do? He's like, I don't know, whatever you say.
Yeah.
She's like, but I know what I want.
Yeah.
I'm asking you to make a
You.
decision. You see? So that's when she's come almost horrified, like, okay, who
Yeah.
am I dealing with?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see?
Yeah.
Because now she feels like he's in this fiddle position, especially when it comes to making serious decision. His fear is, what if I make a decision that she does not approve of?
Yeah.
You see?
Mm.
So that's when she realized sometimes I'm with somebody who is emotionally not present or not mature enough.
Not mature enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. You basically you veered into a topic that's been a topic of discussion for me with different people, men and women alike, where you've got relationships that are going well, and then eventually the attraction dies.
Right.
Majority of the time, the attraction dies in the side of the woman because the men are not leading the relationship. How do you tackle that? Because I asked that question before, because the conundrum is this. You've got a woman here, she wants the man to lead, but if she asks him to lead, he's going to be doing it because she's asked him to do it.
Right, right.
And he doesn't want to do that
Right.
because he's going to hate himself then because I'm doing this because my wife asked me to do or my
Sure.
girlfriend asked me to do it.
Sure.
So it has to come from him. But how do you get him to start it, to start the process, to say, okay, now I think it's time for me to lead, if he doesn't have that background?
Okay, well, let me start from the woman's perspective. This is very interesting. Now, just think about this. Women are naturally nurturing. Okay, so they give birth. So what they'll do with their babies, they will hold their baby, soothe their baby, love on their baby, feed their baby. Now, when a mother is in this mothering role, the last thing she has for the baby is erotic desire for the baby.
Yeah.
See, because now she's nurturing. So can you imagine now you have this grown woman who understands the nurturing role towards her baby, but now she has to baby a grown man, or should I say a grown child. And so if she does this, let's say she gives in,
Yeah.
and she tries to nurture him, help him, guess what dies simultaneously?
The erotic.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
desire erotically for him, that dies because now she's assuming psychologically, emotionally a motherly role. The mother cannot be attracted
Can
to
be
her
attracted
baby.
to a child.
You
Yeah.
see?
Yeah.
And so now he gets upset. It's like, you know what? She's doing the laundry, she's cooking the dinner, she's going to work, she's fixing the wall, she's fixing the toilet, she's doing everything at work. He's watching his soccer, he's playing video games. He's tired, he needs to rest.
Yeah.
And then 10 o'clock at night, you want to have sex with her? She's like, what are you doing, idiot? You see?
Yeah.
So, but he doesn't understand this. Then he will go and cheat on her, claiming that it's her fault because you're not taking care of my needs.
Yeah.
But without understanding what wounds actually she's struggling with, what frustration she has, what even resentment, because she's like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
You see? Because by all looks of it, you had it all made. But boy, did I have it wrong, you see? So that's the tension. But I think that's why it's important for us to understand that dynamic psychologically, you see?
Interesting.
So now if you come to the men now, so I think it will be him realizing, I need to grow up. I need to do whatever it takes by first admitting, accepting that I've got to grow. It's a vulnerable place to be in.
Yeah.
You see? And then write down a list. Where do I need to go? How do I need to go about it? Who do I need to be with? You know, and why do I need to do it in order for me to engage in that process of self-development, maturity, and growth? It's possible, but you have to be vulnerable to do it.
Yeah. You have to be able to allow yourself to
Yeah.
fall before you get back up.
Yeah, most of the men won't do that.
But that's the thing, because most of us guys, we want convenience, as you said earlier, and it's not convenient to go down that path.
No, it's not convenient.
Yeah. So then how do you, because that's the direction that I see most of us going into, where you see a lot of guys who they'll be engaging in entertainment more than engaging in being productive, right? That's the trend. And then how do you then change that so that the women then don't need it? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking this. For a long time, when the feminist movement was growing, I was like, man, but why are the women like fighting the wars in a sense, like hypothetically? not hypothetically, but as an analogy. They are now fighting the wars. They've taken the battle and the armor, everything. They are fighting the wars. So why not they put down the armor so that the men can take the armor and fight the wars? And then a couple of years ago, I realized like it's not about the women putting down the armor. It's about the men taking up the armor, their own armor, and then fighting so much that the women don't feel that they need to fight.
Yeah, that's true.
You understand?
Right, definitely.
But then, sorry to cut you off just a little bit more here, where if the men were to stand up and fight, stand up and take control, stand up and lead the household, then the women wouldn't have to do it. And then the balance is restored. That's how I feel. But you also have to take into account the whole modern view of things where men and women are equal, women are fighting for their rights and stuff like that. So how does a man navigate this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Actually, I would definitely have to come to the defense of men 100%. Because I do feel since...
Is that because you're a man?
No, no, it's because of what has happened to men. You know, since the 60s, we have noticed this, like you said, this surge of feminist movement. Now, you've laid it out perfectly of why. What's the reason death behind why do women feel the need to get their independence, find their voice, which was excellent. The mistake actually in the conception of the feminist movement was that we need to finally find our power, find our voice without men involvement. I think if they started off seeking the best for women with men's presence, with men's support, then both sexes would have benefited and the society at large would have benefited amazingly. But we've seen the feminist movement have taken women to the point where they've convinced women you could do it all on your own and you do not need men. So now in the 21st century, we have various cultures, especially developed Western cultures, to where we telling these young women, you need to have a great education, you need to have financial security, you need to have your independence, which they have. And guess what these women are struggling with now? Loneliness. Now they're wondering, where are the men? It's like, well, but what did we do with the men? We left them behind. And plus, we promoted concept like misogyny. We promoted concept like toxic masculinity. So we were telling the men that actually you are too manly. We were telling the men actually there's something defective about your menness because you're all about the patriarchy, you're all about, you know, macho-ness. We need to cut that down. We need to feminize men a little bit. You see, in order to temper down the power and the control. When in reality, men were not seeking control and power in general. Some were, but in general. What they want is actually amplify their role, maximize the potential to the maximum so where she will be protected, to where she will feel safe, and to where he will find his relevance, his worth and significance. So a lot of men have lost that sense of significance. They've lost the sense of relevance. That's why they're just drifting in meaninglessness and lostness. You see? Now, I'm not fully blaming that movement, but it contributed hugely to where we are today. So how do we overcorrect? How do we correct that? The overcorrection, if you will. But we start by man understanding his responsibility. And taking that responsibility to fully sit in that role that he was given as a man. You see, to lead, to protect, to provide, and to just be there to connect. And once that happens, it brings that sense of balance, right, between men and women. And guess who benefits? The children. That is society benefits. Society grows. Society thrive when you have that basic pillar of society being stable. Men and women discharging their responsibilities, playing their role to the fullest of their ability. Yeah.
Interesting. When you talk about the role that men have, or the responsibility that they have, I know you're a spiritual man, so I imagine you go to scripture to get what that role is.
Right.
I would do the same.
Right.
What does Scripture say about this?
Well, if we look at the first responsibility for the man in Scripture, he says, work. Is it?
Interesting.
Yeah. God
Yeah.
created the garden and he told him to till the ground, keep it, make sure you work. You see? So you understand responsibility is one of the first duty for men. I can't, I don't think it's acceptable for a man to sit and wait for work to come to him. No, you go, you find
You
the
have to
work.
find it.
You need to find the work.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing actually, you're preparing yourself to protect now, to provide now for those under your responsibility.
Yeah.
But how come you want to have a girlfriend, you want to get married, or you want all the privileges that comes with relationship, but you're not willing to make the sacrifice necessary for it? It does not work. You cannot put the cart in front of the ox. And I think with our society nowadays, that's one of the unfortunate situations.
Yeah.
That we've not learned responsibility. We've wanting more the right that comes with, or the privilege that comes with the relationship. You see?
I see what you mean. And I see a lot of young men falling into that where they're not taking responsibility to build themselves and to, you said, to prepare yourself to take responsibility or to prepare yourself to provide for a future wife and kids.
Sure.
But many men are not looking forward to having a wife and kids. Many men are thinking like, okay, I'm still living with my parents. I get my dinners prepared, my clothes are cleaned, and I get to spend time with my friends. I don't need a woman to be there every day with me. I can go out and see my girl like 3-4 times a week. I go out with her and then I come back home. If we need to spend a weekend together, we'll spend a weekend together. To them, that's the ideal life because it's the ideal balance. But then that's not looking into the future. I don't see this as a preparing for a bright future. But a lot of men are in that space now, and it's convenient. Again, with that word, convenience.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
what
I
would you
was
say
gonna say
about that?
there's not much meaning in convenience long term, because in reality, this is what you're saying, which is so true. Many young men today, we want instant gratification. We don't want to postpone gratification. But a responsible man, a dutiful man, a meaningful man is one who exercises postponed gratification. That is, I will not satisfy my wants now. I will delay it in order so I can prepare for what I need.
Yeah.
You see?
That's very hard for a young man, though. I mean, I'm thinking about boys S4 and S5 who are now in school. You want to be cool, and there are girls around, and you want to impress the girls, right? For a boy in that position to say, okay, I'm going to now focus on getting a good job, getting good grades and whatever to set my life up so that when I do meet that girl 2-3 years from now, then I can start talking to their parents about having a life together or whatever. But then if he decides to do that, most of the girls that he is looking at now are not waiting.
Okay. But Lonnie,
So
listen.
I understand that you need to be looking to the future, but the environment now is about instant gratification.
Right.
But it's true, we need to start looking to the future.
But I was gonna say this. Boys have always been interested in girls from time immemorial. I mean,
Yeah, true.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When Adam opened his eyes, he's like, wow, when he saw Eve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So from the very beginning, men has always been attracted to women. Men have killed for women. Men have sacrificed for women. But the one thing we don't have in our modern society is the rite of passage.
Yeah.
You see, that process to where I learn the pain in order to gain. I learned the benefit of sacrificing today in order to secure tomorrow. The idea of going through my wilderness in order to sit in my paradise, in my promised land. That's what we've done away with this. So when you lose that process, you know, if you will, that crucible that burns the impurities in you of immaturity and form you in this mature man, then you are perpetually creating a generation of adolescents, of children, of grown children, actually.
Overgrown children,
So that's what's unfortunate with our modern day of convenience. Very hedonistic. It's all about pleasure. It's all about doing it now. Drug, you know, sex and rock and roll kind of thing, like in the 70s. But it does not work. This is how society actually crumbled down. Actually, it reminds me, if you think about the the whole notion of drug, sex, and rock and roll in the 70s. The reason that really kind of came up in the 70s because people were tired of wars. They were tired of, just struggling. You had World War II, and you got Vietnam War, you had Cold War. So the overcorrection was let's do away with materialism. Let's just with doing what is right, with sacrificing. How about we just focus on ourselves? Hippie movement grew up. Beatles became the new Jesus Christ, and so be with whoever, love whoever, sex whoever, drug whatever.
Yeah.
So for 10 years we did this. Okay, it was putting a premium on the individual.
Yeah.
Whatever feels good to you is right.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to abort your baby at your convenience, do it. If you don't want to be married anymore, do it. If you don't want to do this, do it. And then what happened in the early 80s? HIV was introduced. It's like life teaches us, if we take all the guardrails of society that keeps us, there's hell to pay. So now we have to learn from this. History always repeats itself if we don't learn from it. So that we understand that, hey, listen up. There's nothing wrong in actually, being adventurous. There's nothing wrong in being innovative. But let's not get rid of the pillars of society that have kept us as human beings for all these years. If we get rid of this, we get rid of it to our own peril.
Yeah.
You see, that's why I believe fundamentally men and women play such a crucial role. They are the building block of any society. That is family.
Family. Yeah.
Building block of any thriving society. The minute we redefine it, the minute we get rid of it, that's the minute the society goes down to hell in a handbasket.
So then would you say that people should be focusing towards building families rather than building the self?
But of course.
Yeah.
Because there's no self. Where do I get my identity? See, the moment I'm born, guess what my parents do? They give me a name. They try to have a human being with no name. They don't have any history. They don't have any family. Guess what? It's like, okay, what's that weird creature? Is that an alien? What's that thing we say? Nobody wants to relate to it because it's not relatable.
Yeah.
You see? But when I'm born in a family, they give me a name. They're like, okay, that's your identity. And that's my first experience with this first government, if you will, the first society. Mom, dad, brother, sister, and then it expands. It's a preparation actually towards the world at large. You see?
Yeah.
It helps me understand myself. It helps ground me, and then it will throw me into the world now. So I can go spread, multiply, expand, if you will, that perspective.
Interesting. Interesting. I like the idea of family. When I was younger, when I was about let's say 15, 16, I was like probably the last of my friends who would be thinking about getting married, thinking about building a family and everything, which is strange because I grew up in I would say, a rather stable family. My father was very present. My mother was there. I had two older siblings, a brother and a sister. So I had all the different examples that I needed to know how society functions.
Sure.
But still, I was going off the guardrails, as you would say, just to experiment and see how extreme life can be outside of the setting of the family. Right? But then something did switch, where I realized that for me to have a sense of stability in my life, having a stable woman beside me is one of the building blocks of that.
Right.
I realized that.
Right.
But I also know that not every young man would think that way.
Of course.
Or would have that switch.
Of course.
My goal is to find out how do we switch that with the men that are growing up now. There are men that are, I wouldn't say beyond the point of no return, but I find it more difficult to change the mind of someone who's already grown up than to change the mind of someone who's young. How do we then instill that in our society, in our young men, that, look, we really need more stability, and this is what it's going to lead to? Like, what are the fruits of that?
Yeah,
if I would ask
there
that.
you go. I think we need to show the fruits of not having that kind of family. For instance, if I use
It's like extreme negative.
if I use the United States of America, Okay, let me use the black community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the 60s and 70s, 75% of boys who were born in a two-parent home.
75%.
75%.
Mm.
Just barely 50 years ago. They were highly educated. Um, they were productive. All of these things. Today,
Mm.
33%, probably
Mm.
even less.
That's less than half the
Less than
world.
half
Mm.
are being born in a two-parent home. Guess what's happening? Absentee father means drop out in high school.
Mm.
They don't go to college, less education, less money, struggle, more violent, and incarcerated, more than anybody else. So there's a direct link in when we don't have that structure of the family to increasing violence, to disorder, to anarchy, to struggle, to poverty, to sickness and disease. All of these, curses of life, all of this struggle of life is a consequence of destroying the very structure of family.
Mm.
It's just plain as day. And because it creates stability. You see, even when you look at suicidality, there's increased suicidal ideation, increased drug use, increased incarceration, increased teenage pregnancy, increased homelessness when we break the family structure.
Mm.
For any child who's born without mom and dad present throughout their lives, raised without mom and dad throughout their life, more at risk for all these struggles. That's just established.
Yeah.
So we just need to look at facts, not even sentimentality, just facts
Mm.
to show us that is that where we want society to go? You see? But if not, then let's do what works.
Yeah.
You see? We can still be innovative, we can still be adventurous, we still be fun, but we don't need to undo what's supposed to hold the society together.
Mm.
You see? That's what I'm really concerned about in our modern day time. We are redefining, we are almost even deconstructing
Mm.
what has brought us where we are today and brought all the success. And what we've seen with young boys. If you were to ask me, what are some of the basic predictor of success in young men? Two things. Reading and writing.
Reading and writing.
Reading and writing, and even let's say arithmetic counting, but technically reading and writing.
Reading and writing. Yeah.
Okay, so when young boys, what will cause young boys to stay in school? It's like, man, they have mom and dad encouraging them, laying out a pathway for success, not just professionally, but as a human being.
Yeah.
But you take that away, there's instability naturally.
Mm.
You see? And so when those young boys are starting to be lost at 11, 12, 13-year old, guess who approaches them? Like white on right? Drug dealers do. Because they realize these young boys are vulnerable.
Not vulnerable.
And they're desiring, they're thirsting for a male role model. So he comes, the first thing he does, he puts his hand on this young man's shoulder, gives him a name, redefining him.
Yeah.
Now he's born again for the first time. And so when he gets the attention that he's always desiring from a father, he's never going to want to lose it again. He doesn't care if he's going to end up in jail. He doesn't care if he's going to get beat up. He's never going to let it go. In a sense, drug dealers are some of the best psychologists around because they understand that psychology of human thirst for connection.
Yeah.
You see? And the sooner we understand that, the better it's going to be for us.
I'm an optimistic. I would like to see better things coming. What advice would you give anyone who's listening to this or watching this? Like, my question is always, where do we start?
Yeah. There was this mantra that the politicians used to use way back here in Seychelles. Nous enfants, nous trésor. In a sense, our children are our treasure. I feel like if we truly believe this, that will be the best place to start, to see how invaluable our children are because they are the future of our country. And the potential of what we can become lies in them. It's almost like seeing children as seeds with the promise of beautiful forests in the future. That's the potential, that's the capacity that they have. But in order to do this, we need to plant these seeds in fertile soil.
Yeah.
But we can't plant this beautiful seed in toxic soil. In arid land. It's not going to grow. So, yeah, I believe nous avons nous all. But now, how are you acting upon that idea to make it a reality? To where we literally become the jewel of the world, like we know we have the potential to be.
Yeah.
Seychelles is one of the most beautiful places in this world. But we don't want to just brag about our fauna and our flora, our beaches and our sea. We want to say Seychelles is the most beautiful people in the world. You know, that's one of the biggest we call it compliment that we want
Yeah.
to hear. But we have the potential to be that. But it takes resolve. It takes commitment. It takes sacrifice. It takes resources in order to invest in us in order to enjoy that kind of benefit. But if we say it with our lips, but we're not interested to invest in it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
That's another point to lay out here as we're near the end of this conversation. The aspect of agency and self-responsibility. Because for many years I've heard where many people are now either blaming the government because they're not, because you mentioned resources, right? They're either saying, but the government is not doing enough for us, or the schools are bad, or the parents in the community are bad, or the police are not doing their job, or whoever. Always blaming the outside. But the sense of agency is that every individual now has to take the responsibility to change themselves. Each one teach one is a hashtag I used to use way back, where one person, like you, for example, you do your part to change you, to change your family, and then eventually to change the people around you. I will do my part to change me, to change my family, and the people around me. So if every man in Seychelles does that, to whatever degree, then I believe that 5-10 years from now, we're going to be a totally different country. But then we don't have that.
No, but I agree with you. But it's not idealistic. That's the ideal. The fact is nowadays most men are lost in that awareness of where do I start.
Yeah.
So I think this is why then we need all the various agencies, you know, governmental, you know, spiritual, family, community, to do their part in bringing that awareness and establishing the structure necessary in order to cultivate that kind of awareness and desire and motivation in young men and young women. Many people want that, but they just don't know how. They're lost, so they give up. They say it's not possible.
Yeah.
You see? So we need to speak more about it. We need to make family focus, society focus, as far as the kind of society we're talking about. We need to make it an importance. We need to make it a priority. We need to kind of like inundate our TVs and our radios, our conversations on that particular issue. But if we continue to make it about finances, if we can make it about the S&Ps and Dows, it's not going to work. How about we put premium on our people and the capacity that we have? One thing I realize about young men are starving for encouragement. That's it. They just want to be nudged. They want somebody to see them. They want somebody to motivate them. They need to hear that you can do it. It may seem simplistic, but young men need that. You see? And so when you offer them what their soul is desiring, then it's unbelievable how it catalyzes, in a sense, that sense of I want more. I know I can become because somebody has believed in me enough to make me see my own potential.
So then, if I get it correctly, then that one underlying message that you would like to send out to anyone who's listening here is that to encourage the men in your life. Because men desperately need that encouragement in whatever shape or form that you want to.
And our society will be transformed with that encouragement. If we remain consistent, it will absolutely transform. And our young women too, they need to be seen, validated, they need to be protected. One quick point on our women: a lot of young girls are abused in this country, horribly abused. And then the perpetrators are buying their silence. So they're working sexually. The sexual violence in our country is almost unspeakable. But we don't hear nothing about it.
Yeah, it's so
because
much
that's
more.
what we're good at. We're good at buying the silence of all these victims. So now,
Mm,
can you imagine? I'm walking around with all that trauma,
yeah.
trying to make the most of my life,
Mm,
raising kid in that kind of like
yeah, yeah,
dysfunctional, messed
yeah.
up situation.
Mm,
So, so yeah, we need to protect our young women as well, while we
mm,
give encouragement and support to our young boys.
mm. Interesting. That's a strong point at the end there. Wow. Okay. That's coming from someone who's on the ground dealing with the people, so you know the stats.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not gonna have to fact check
sure, sure, sure.
your stuff, but
Yeah,
yeah, we'll have to end here because we're out of time. Thank you very much for coming
you're
on.
welcome.
We definitely need to do this again because
Definitely,
there's so much to talk about.
sure.
Uh, Last thing that we'd mention is the hero journey. Just say a few things about the hero journey because we've talked about that a few times before. A few words on that, and
Yeah, the hero journey is basically the idea that when you look at most myths in any culture, any nation, the hero of all these cultures follow almost the same pattern, right? You have a young man, a young woman who's living in this ordinary environment, this familiar environment. But then at one point, there's a mentor that shows up in his or her life,
mm,
showing him or her the potential of what they could become.
mm,
And so then you see that young man, he goes into this unknown territory,
mm,
see, facing the beast, fighting the dragon.
mm,
And while he's wrestling with this enemy, he discovers that he's much more than he thought he was.
mm,
And now you see a transformation of the person.
mm,
That's where the hero start emerging. And the hero actually conquers over the greatest fear that he had, even accomplishes great victories for his nation, for his culture, for
mm,
his people, for his tribe. And then, as part of the journey, the hero wants to come back home, but then he faces terrible tragedy.
mm,
That's part of the process, isn't it?
mm.
There's great
Loss.
curses to our success.
Mm,
And then ultimately, when he comes back home, he's master of two worlds, the world he left and the
mm,
world he conquered. And then
mm,
everybody has benefits. So
mm.
what about we tell a young man that could be you? We tell a young woman that
That could
can be
be,
you. Can you
yeah.
imagine what society would create?
You can be the hero.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and transform society because of it.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for that.
you're welcome.
Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your honesty. And yeah, I hope with these words, the people listening now, there's a few steps forward to having a better Seychelles, a better society, and stronger families for
I
that
sure hope
matter.
so. I
Yeah.
really believe in that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Thanks.